Buddy, the old frozen in time Facebook Live. Oh, whenever this goes live, I'm excited to see you guys. There we go. We are in the game, I think. There we go, yeah. Quick little announcement for you guys. Version 2.0. This guy, more stuff about going meetingless, I should say, phoneless. And also, actually, I'm going to be dropping a training probably tomorrow or Wednesday about how we actually run our agency. We run largely a Facebook ad agency that it is ad managerless, at least for me personally. And so I'm going to show you guys a bunch of cool stuff so you can actually like really build a real lifestyle agency. What's up, Evans, brother? Good to see you. Um, so cool stuff in there. So if you haven't checked that out, if you're on Audible or on Kindle, it should update automatically. But I'm a old school physical copy guy, so you'll want to check that out if you're physical. Anyways, let's get into the good stuff. First one up is Randy. Randy said, "I figured since we are all computer nerds here, this would be a good place to start." What kind of computer chair are you guys using to be ergonomic? I sit with my feet up, probably very bad, and notice signs of soreness in my wrist and shoulder. Probably should have addressed this later, but figured I could get some solid feedback here. Spanks, Randy. I don't necessarily have an answer for you on the chair, but I have a suggestion. The smartest entrepreneurial friend I know is a friend of mine named Rob, whose companies have done 100 million last few years in a row, approaching 500 million. And he's told me his goal is to get to a billionaire, and I have no reason to doubt him. He's got stuff sold all across North America in stores everywhere. And he said to me, the sweet spot for me is I like to work between 2 to 4 hours a day. More than that, and I become too work heavy. Less than that, and I feel like I'm doing nothing and I'm bored. And so I try and run my agency with a similar principle. It doesn't always work out like that. Sometimes it's less, sometimes it's more. But I try to keep that as a benchmark of like, I want to work like 2 to 4 hours a day because I actually like the stuff I do. But I don't want to do it so much that I become like super work heavy. And if you do that, really like it'll become less about the chair. It tells me that if your chair is such a big deal and your computer is such a place you're doing so much work from, that chances are that's the real issue, and you got to figure out that, not the chair thing. It's a business structure. So check out that training when I drop it, probably like I said tomorrow. But I'll show you how we get done way more with less, and basically have a whole bunch of leverage built in mind, so you don't have to sit so much in the goddamn chair all the time. Probably not the perfect answer. I'm sure some other people can chime in with actual chair recommendations that are better than what I just did. As you can see, I got a little just shitty flexible thing here. You says, "Hi all, I'm writing to ask if there's any alternative business models apart from the traditional business model of digital marketing services where you sell certain packages to the client based on the amount spent. I know some digital marketing services prefer to choose an equity model versus a package model, but how does that work? Are there any other models? I'm asking this because I know the difficulties in scaling a traditional digital marketing agency as it's service based. Is there a way where we can be a digital marketing arm of the company and scale our profits as they scale? In this way, I can take on fewer clients and go deep on that vertical rather than spread myself out over a broad spectrum with crazy churn. I'm not looking to build the next Vayner Media. Gary, shout out to Gary V. Just looking for a more stable way to give digital marketing services and acquire assets rather than just selling time." Oh, my man, I feel you. I mean, I wrote a whole book on this topic for that reason. So a couple of things with that. Yes, there are more pricing models than can you just sell a monthly retainer. As you mentioned, you can do a profit share. And profit share has a bunch of subcategories. Profit share can be like, I'll generate a lead and charge you for a lead. There's like a pay per lead. There's a pay for consultant, which is like, okay, you're making $1 million per year. If I can help you improve that to 2 million, will you pay me a percentage on the extra? Like, there's those business models. There's pay per sales things. I'm actually working on something like this with Jay Abraham, where I'm going to be doing some direct mail stuff for him, sending out stuff. And every time there is a sale, I get paid like an affiliate using his kind of audience and tools and all that. So there's a lot of ways you can play with that. And you can also do hybrid models, by the way, of those pricing. You can do a retainer plus a bonus. But the big thing you mentioned is you use the word asset. And this is an advanced kind of level topic that most agency owners aren't at the place to really understand. But it's the idea that every time you do something and produce a result, there's a side effect where there's an asset created. And I'll give you like a simple example. Imagine a person gets hired by a plumber, and the plumber says, I need more business. And they decide the easiest way to do that is with Google AdWords, because they can make the phone ring relatively quick from people who are looking for plumbers. So they turn on Google AdWords, and there's a lot of like tweaking and testing and trying different ads and landing pages. But eventually they get it dialed in and they can get this plumber steady phone calls. Well, what most people do in that situation is they go looking for another client. They look for another dentist or an e-commerce or someone I can do SEO for. And in reality, you have created an asset, right? Like you've created a landing page that works, a series of ad that works. Those are called marketing assets. You've also created a client relationship. So that's an asset where more things could be sold to that client. But having said that, is like there's probably 3,000 other plumbers that exact same system would work for. So one way to make the scaling journey easier is to sell the shit that's working over and over and over again. And that's the cool thing about marketing assets when you understand that, is they get more valuable the more you use them, right? So like if the landing page works for one dentist in Frog Balls, Arkansas, and you bring that over to Omaha, Nebraska, it's probably going to work there, right? It becomes more valuable each time it works. So if you understand this, the goal is to actually work for the control and ownership of assets, and then you'll find that scaling becomes a lot easier because you're reselling assets, not services, where most people are selling custom solutions and custom services. And not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just telling you from personal experience, it's a very hard way to scale. Ruben says, is anyone running TikTok ads here? We're doing a little bit. I should say I'm more dabbling than I would say like running ads. What I'm testing is something that I've done in the lawyer space, which is what I call omnipresent marketing, which means to be on, instead of like trying to focus on Facebook or Google, is I try and use them all together, almost like a single platform. So meaning this is how we're doing it in the lawyer space, but this is also what I'm going to be adding to this agency thing. So those of you guys who click on my shit will find this out in a damn hurry, is that what happens is you then get retargeted. So you'll see our shit on YouTube. You'll see our shit on all these Google display sites. Wherever Google shows ads, you'll see us on search. You'll see us on LinkedIn. You'll see us on Twitter. You'll see us on TikTok. So I'm a big fan of this omnipresent, like kind of retargeting stuff. So you guys will be hearing me talking more about that. But that's all we're really doing TikTok ads for, is just omnipresent retargeting. And then I have organic videos that we repurpose that are mostly just shot for everywhere and then get thrown onto the old TikTok. Kenneth says, who is actually having success with lead generation and delivering high quality leads to the client? Just got off the phone with the client. They told me the leads were terrible. I'm using a lead gen campaign and using 3 multiple choice questions to make the leads more relevant, but they're just not good enough. I've tried conversion campaigns on the landing page, but it seems this isn't working anymore like it used to be. Is there anyone who can give me some solid advice? Kenneth, firstly, I just want to say I feel you, dude, for real. This was like from 2016 to 2019, pretty much what we talked about every fucking day in our agency, because this whole like clients say they're bad leads, and there's layers to this. So I'm going to give you a few things that we've tried, and you can get potential solutions out of that and things that like make sense for you. So one of the things to understand is there are some clients who are just bad fucking clients. I've had I actually remember there's a guy in Kansas, and we made his phone ring a whole bunch. In fact, way cheaper than normal with a lot of phone calls. And I remember with the first conversation I had with him, he had this automated voice greeting, and I called, and it made me wait like 7-8 minutes to get to a human. Thank you for calling such and such law firm. Your call is important to us. Like that kind of bullshit. And at the end, the thing screwed up in the transfer, and I had to call back and wait another like 5-6 minutes. And so it took me like 15 minutes to get through to a human. And then when I finally got through, they're like, like they weren't that good at answering the call to begin with. And so the thing I told them was like, you have to fix that. Like people aren't going to wait 15 minutes to talk to a human and get hung up on multiple times if you want to close leads. Of course, a month later, he hadn't changed that and said to me that they're all bad leads. They're terrible, every single lead. And of course, we have the recordings, and I can listen to people like hang up. I can listen to them fumble and bumble through things. I can see that like they're just shitty at answering the phone calls. So this is a pretty much a universal thing. Like 90% of local businesses are shit at answering the phone. Shit. They either don't answer, they can't answer basic questions. And so when they say they're bad leads, it's not always a reflection of you and your service. There's a couple of things. One is, if this is a case where it's an actual lead quality thing, one thing I actually like to have them do is define what actually makes a bad lead. right? Like, did the people not answer the phone? Because that's a different issue than are they unqualified, meaning like the people picked up the phone, but these people like don't, like in my case, they wouldn't have they weren't injured in an accident, right? There's no lawsuit there, or they don't have a case, right? Like they don't have insurance. There's nothing we can do if they don't have insurance or something like that, right? So there's different levels to the bad lead. Now I'll talk to you a little bit about solutions and things that we've tried to eliminate this problem, because this is a really ongoing thing. One of those I've tried is letting them know they suck at the phone at the very beginning of the relationship. What I've found is if you tell them that they suck at answering the phone like 3 months into that relationship, they don't believe you, because it just sounds like backpedaling. Like, you said you're going to get us all this business and all these leads. Now you're saying we can't answer the phone, because they assume they're good at the phone and they're really not. So what I like to do is establish that at the beginning. And what I do is one of the things we've done is I'll hire a guy on Fiverr. I'll call their law firm, or he'll call their law firm, I should say, and pretend to be like a potential case. And then they'll screw it up, and I'll send them the recording and say, hey, I just want to let you know we're going to be generating you leads, but there's another simultaneous issue going on. What's up, Carlos? And the other simultaneous issue is that, like the phone call is an issue. So we're going to have to work on that at the same time. And what you'll find is, by the way, the longer you do this, the more you'll realize what clients really struggle with is conversion and client, like lifetime client value. And what they think they struggle with is they just need leads. And they don't need leads, because you found that out the hard way. Another potential solution that I found is to only work with the businesses within your niche that actually do know how to close. And there's an easy way to tell, by the way. So in my industry, there's like 3 or 4 companies that will train you how to close on the phone, and there's like 3 or 4 companies that will close for you. So I know if they're using one of those like 6, 7, 8 solutions, then they already know how to do it, and therefore like I can plug and play my shit. I experienced this. I'd be running campaigns for like 5 different lawyers, 10 different lawyers, and what I found was, and this was when we were first building this up, 3 of the lawyers were stoked with it because they knew how to close. And then when I dug a little deeper, I found out they had gone through the phone training. They'd already been through those things. So I would potentially resolve that as well by just making offers. Another thing is to focus on things they can close. So like in the lawyer space, even if they're really bad, they can still close. So like in the lawyer space, even if they're really bad, they can still close referrals, which is why most of them get their business from referrals, because referrals, you can wait a long time to call them back. They're predetermined to do business with you. You can fumble and bumble through the sales process. You can not handle basic questions. And usually they'll still close because their friend said, this is the guy or this is the gal that you got to trust. And so one of the things I've experimented with as well is bringing our businesses more referrals from the customers and clients they already have. And they can be dog shit terrible at closing referrals, and it still works. So that's another potential solution. Having said that, I'll tell you 60% of the client success journey is just who you fucking choose as a client. It took me probably about 10 years to realize that if I just chose the right clients, everything after would be easier. It would eliminate so many of the headaches and things like that. And so what I suggest to you is just go for the people that already know how to close those leads, and you'll have a totally different experience. They'll say, can you send us more leads? And then you can charge them pay per lead, and you can scale that up. Sometimes you can be charging 10, 20, 30, 40, 50K for a single client because they're closing and they're happy. So, I mean, there's different ways you can deal with that. Those are some of the ones we've tried. I've also tried, by the way, phone training clients. Like actually, we created a whole phone training. It was just a series of MP3 files, and I called like, I don't know, like 50 law firms, and I had examples of like, here's a good greeting, here's a bad greeting, here's a good opener, here's a bad opener, here's a doesn't know how to answer questions, here's how does know how to answer questions, here's how to follow up with someone quickly, here's didn't follow up with someone for a day and a half, and then they can just hear the differences. That helped, and we also had a phone script. But my favorite solution to all of that, just deal with people who already know how to fucking close, and then you'll find most of that shit goes away, and you don't have to feel bad about your service. Having said that, about 50% of the time, I should say, it is an issue where the agency's actually actually bringing unqualified people or bad leads. But you want to find that out. Like what actually makes a bad lead? What do you mean? They didn't answer, they weren't qualified? Like, give me some specifics about what made them a bad lead. Oh, they didn't call and say, here's my credit card. Well, that you got to work them a little bit, right? Abul, our man, agency veterans. Do your clients generally have an idea of how much they can afford to spend to acquire a sale client, or is this a metric that you need to help them work out? Abul, if you're working with the top, I want to say like 2 to 5% of a market, they'll know that number inside and out because they're already running advertisements in different places, and this is a big criteria of mine. I like working with the top 2 to 5% of markets. Having said that, if you're working with the bottom 95%, they probably won't know those numbers. There may be the odd exception, in which case I would educate them on how to manage that, because otherwise what you're going to get into situations is you're going to be making money and they won't know it because they won't actually know their numbers. So you want to educate them on like how much would you pay for a customer, and sometimes that's actually just how you do it. You just ask them a question like, how much would you pay for a customer, client, patient? They give you an answer and you say, okay, well, we're going to shoot for that in our advertising. Our man Oral, dude, I miss you, buddy. Pricing. I'm thinking about a new approach. Any opinions? Dear dentist, I will be like a reliable new marketing employee for you. I will work 100% for you and give 100% performance because I know the business and like it. But you will not pay an additional 100% wage, but only a third of it. So not $7,300 a month, average salary of a marketing consultant in Switzerland, but only $2,500 if that works. I could try next. You only pay half, $3,650 if that works. I could test. You get from me the performance of a whole team, but pay only an additional wage of $7,300. I read the book, How to Price Effectively, a guide for managers and entrepreneurs. It introduces something like this as price anchoring, reference pricing. There's a couple things in there, Oral. I mean, you have the good framework of a solid offer. And we've talked about this before in the mastermind, but I also wrote about this in the book now in version 2.0. There's a formula I use for pricing called IVQ. And IVQ stands for the investment is, like in your case, the price. So it sounds like you want to go for like $3,650. The value, what they're going to get for it, like what outcomes you can produce for that, and the qualification of what they would need to be successful with that. I would say the investment part of your thing is clear. The value proposition is not as clear because what ends up happening is nobody wants an employee. They want what that employee is going to do for them. So I would focus a little more on like, rather than like, I'll give you like my full-time attention, blah, blah, blah. Focus on like, while working for you, I can accomplish this, right? It's the outcome they want. So focus on like what those outcomes, because I've always said this, like price and value are related. Like they're very interchangeable in some ways. And a lot of times if you just say price without contextualizing it with value, it doesn't make any sense. So like, for example, if I say a car is $5,000, like the context is what kind of car, right? Like if I'm paying for a 1975 used Toyota, that's way overpriced. If I'm getting a brand new Ferrari, that's a cheap car, right? Like $5,000, you should run out the door and buy that. So we want to contextualize what they're going to actually get in terms of outcomes and not in terms of doing. So this is that old, you want to talk about what you're going to get done while working for them, not about what you're going to be doing. Like I'll be your full-time, you get my full attention kind of person. And then the qualification factor is like, who would be best suited to use this? I imagine it's probably people who have some kind of marketing team in-house or are thinking about hiring a marketing team, and therefore you represent a cost savings to them. There's actually a guy in the legal space named Bill Hauser. I don't know the guy personally. I've just seen a YouTube interview with him and Josh Nelson, and he was talking about his service is $6,500 a month, which for a lot of agencies, that's probably a little bit on the higher side. And they're going, how do you get $6,500 a month? And the reason he gets it is they sell an all-in-one solution for lawyers. So it's the same place you get your SEO, your social media, your reviews, your Google Management, like all the little services they would pay for in one place. And typically a lawyer will spend $10,000 to $30,000 on those services, bought individually, and have to deal with 10 different vendors, as they call them. And so his proposition is, rather than dealing with 10 different people, just deal with one firm you trust. We'll do it all in one single solution in-house, and you'll save 20 grand off of doing that, $6,500. And that's a strong value proposition. So I would kind of probably model that kind of like, you're going to get this all in one kind of, and then it contextualized with outcomes. But if you do that, you have the makings of a really strong offer there. The investment, once you add the context, it'll show them how they're going to actually save money compared to the alternatives, and then qualify who it's for. And I'd imagine in your case, it's people like that. They're already using different people and want to consolidate into a single effort. And then it becomes a no-brainer. Jake, hey guys, I'm new here. Been blasting through Frankie's content on YouTube and finding it extremely valuable. All right, man, Jake, that's cool. Question I have is I'm looking at starting an agency around Google Ads, selling one particular service, search, for one particular client in a sub niche. Frankie talks about selling the outcome. I can picture some ideas in my head, like we can help lead gen by X%, but without data, how do you get started? Am I missing something, or have I picked a difficult service to start with? Thanks for any help in advance. PS, loving 2.0 book. Frankie, still have about half to go. For others who need another read, I finished Built to Sell by John Warlow, which was also a great read and recommended. By the way, Built to Sell was a big influence on, version 2.0, understanding how to do something once and get paid for it again and again. Here's the deal, Jake, okay? You'll remember there's a section in the book where I talked about the hammer. The hammer is like, nobody really wants a hammer, right? Like everybody is solving a problem and building something. That's the purpose of a hammer. So like it's different. A hammer is different things to different people. So what I mean by that is like one person will build or get a hammer because they want to build a deck and have big barbecues in their backyard. Another person will want to remodel their kitchen and have like a beautiful place to cook. Another person wants to build a birdhouse with their daughter. So Google AdWords is a hammer. The reason, that's the reason I tell you that, is people are trying to create outcomes with that hammer. So until you have like a specific niche in mind, it's hard to tell you what the outcome is. I can tell you if it's like an increased percentage. People can't see a percentage in their mind, so that's not a very specific outcome. The easiest way to find a specific outcome, and I'm going to dropping a training on this tomorrow, maybe I'll tag you on that. But when you're trying to get a specific outcome, the easiest outcome to create for clients is just the type of business they most want. And I'll tell you, there's one question I've used again and again, and you can ask this directly to clients, or if you don't have clients, you can just go in a Facebook group or a LinkedIn group where these people gather and ask the question to people who aren't yet clients, and they'll still answer it. And it's a very simple question. What kind of clients, or depending on your niche, what kind of clients, patients, or customers, but let's use my lingo. What kind of clients do you wish you had more of? Or which kind of patients do you wish you had more of? Or which kind of customers do you wish you had more of? And they'll answer that, by the way. At least some of them will answer that. In my case, the lawyers will always say, I want the high-value big cases. I want people seriously injured in an accident. I want trucking cases. I want motorcycle cases. I want mass torts cases. I want big shit, right? I want expensive, like, high-value cases, right? So when we're creating an outcome for them, like, we're creating an outcome of, like, I'm going to get you a high-value case, right? So it's different a little bit in every niche, but once you pick a niche, just ask that question, and they'll tell you which outcome they want, and build your agency around that. And I'm not saying it's the only way to be successful, but I found it to be the easiest way to do it because you're creating something they inherently want, and therefore the shit sells itself, and everything else is downhill from there. Just to give you an idea of the power of this, okay? My hometown of Windsor, Ontario, Canada has an abundance of two things. Don't ask me why. We have a shit ton of pizza places, and we have a shit ton of auto body shops. For some reason, even though it's a little shitty town, we have amazing fucking pizza, some of the best on earth. I would rival it right there with New York City. It's really that good. The auto body shop is a stranger phenomenon. Most of the auto body shops exist because some dude just sat there and said, you know, I hate working for somebody else. I'm going to start my own shop. And what ends up happening is they make it way more competitive because they start a business that inherently the market doesn't fucking need, right? So they create this uphill battle because if there's already 100 auto body shops, too many, and you create 101, it's hard work. Now, when I was there, my last girlfriend had a Volkswagen Beetle. It was her dream car, and I remember we went to an auto body shop. We got bumped by a delivery guy, actually, a Chinese food delivery guy, like bumped into our car. And we went to go get it fixed, and they said, oh, we don't do these because they're Volkswagen and they're trickier. And then we went to another place, and they said, oh, we don't touch Volkswagens. And we're like, what? Like, there's hundreds of these places. None of you guys will work on my car. And eventually we got referred to, and there's a guy who only services Volkswagens. In other words, like a sub-niche. And he was fucking crushing it. He was crushing it. So this is my way of saying, if you take the time to just figure out what your market wants up front, it's a little bit of extra work, but man, it'll make your sales process and everything else downhill after, because what you'll be doing for clients is inherently more valuable. So I'm a big fan of doing that, and that's why I say, pick a niche of people, go ask them the question, there's your sub niche, and then figure out how to produce that outcome for them, right? If you ask like an online coach, what kind of people do you wish you had more of? And they said, well, I want people for my big old expensive mastermind, then figure out how to sell their mastermind using whatever tool you got, Facebook ads, in your case, Google AdWords, or SEO or whatever, and you'll inherently, like, your stuff, just like I said, will be more valuable. Paul says, do you show prices on your website? It can weed out the time wasters, but also put people off. Your thoughts, please. Paul, conventional wisdom says you do not put your prices anywhere, and you don't say your prices until the very end of a sales call. I think that works really well if what you got, they can get 1,000 other places, because otherwise they're just going to shop you around. If you follow a little bit of the advice that I talked about in version 2.0 of the book, your stuff will be different enough that they can't get it anywhere. And then if you use the IVQ formula, as I mentioned earlier, to contextualize price, right? Like I said, if there's a car and it's $5,000, that's not a good or a bad price because it depends on the car, right? So you want to contextualize what are you going to get for the money. That's why the value thing is important, and the qualification of like who's best suited to benefit from it. If you do that, what you'll find is like, like you can put your prices anywhere. And I would much rather, personally, I would rather people have the heart attack of how expensive it is before we talk on the phone, not after, right? Like, I don't want to waste 90 minutes on a phone call for you to go $5,000, $10,000, $25,000. I'd much rather you have that heart attack on your own and figure out. And then there's also like the issue of like, sometimes people have to move money around to do shit, right? Well, I got to clear this credit card, or I got to split it between these two things, or I'm going to have to like pull some out of my investments or whatever, right? You want them to figure that out before they get to a phone call with you, not, in the middle of it. Jeremy says, does anyone have a cold email script they can share and recommend? I swear I'm not doing this on purpose, Jeremy, but there is I want to say not a cold email script, but a cold email framework inside of here. And I'll reiterate it for those of you guys, so if you don't want to read the whole book, you don't have to. But I'm a big fan of doing a 3-point thing. The first is I personalize, right? Like, one of the biggest reasons people like get their message is ignored and I get pitched constantly for different shit I do is, like, if you haven't written to me and it's just a generic message you copy and paste to everyone, like, I don't give a fuck because you don't give a fuck, right? So just sometimes starting the conversation, a lot of times people think, like, I love what you guys are up to with blah, blah, blah. It's not about giving fake-ass compliments. It's just commenting on what's going on in their life. So, like, hey, Justin, just saw that you were up in the jungles in Costa Rica there, man. That looks cool. That's it. I'm just commenting on whatever is like going on in their life. And by the way, everybody post this on social media. Like, this shit isn't hidden. Second thing I do, and this is really, really important, not enough people do this step, I name their baby. Okay, everybody in their business has a thing that is near and dear to their heart. So, like, for example, I get people who pitch me on, can I promote your book? My baby has a name. It says Beyond the Agency Box. And every business has a baby who has a name, right? Like, your agency has a name. Their service has a name. And I'll tell you what most people do is they default to not naming the baby. They go more sales, more probably like 10, 15 years ago would have sounded cool, but it's been ruined by 10,000 marketers. It's much more powerful to say, I want to sell your course, and then name that baby. Or I want to sell your mastermind, the Wolfpack Mastermind, or your book, Beyond the Agency Box. And if you do that, you'd be amazed people respond, because what happens is their self-interest and your self-interest align. The third thing I do is I make them an offer that is more like a give than a take. This is a little bit of an art in and of itself, but if your offer sounds like, give me some money and then I'll do something, you're going to have a hard time opening conversations. If it's like, let me do something for you and then you can give me some monies, you can open anybody's door, right? So that's my 3-point framework is personalize, talk to them. It only has to be a sentence or two. Name their baby. Talk about like what you're going to actually like sell of theirs, which is what they care about. And then little 1-point offer. Also in the book, by the way, I got a little 8-point checklist you can go through for cold outreach. I'm not saying it's the only way to be successful, but it's a way that's worked really well for me. And we're kind of, I mean, we do outreach in different forms. Like, I also send direct mail as my outreach. I send gifts sometimes if I'm going after a really big influencer. But I use the same formula every time. It's always those 3 things. And I'll tell you, I don't have to send a lot of shit to open doors. I don't have to send a lot. Like, a lot of people, like, I heard a guy saying today, like, if you want to hit $1 million a year, you better send 10,000 messages a day. And I'm sure that works. Like, I'm sure that works. Like, I ain't knocking it. Like, if you do that kind of volume, I would fucking hope that you're doing some kind of business, like, meaningful amounts. But I'll tell you, I can send 5 messages and pick up 3 clients. Why would I do 10,000, right? Like, I'd much rather do less but better agency lead generation. By the way, $1 million a year for most of you guys is just 1 client a week. If you actually like keep and retain them, like if you're at $2,000 a month and you sign one client every week for $2,000 a month, at the end of the year you will have $104,000 worth of business. Assuming like 10 or 20% of that drops off because you're human, you're gonna end up with like $90,000 a month. And by the way, $83,000, $333.33 per month is $1 million a year. So that's all you actually need to do that. One client a week. So instead of thinking about how can I send 10,000 messages to get one client, I think about how can I send one or two or maybe three really fucking great messages to get those clients. And then you do that, and it's more work for an individual letter, but it's less work than sending 10,000 fucking messages and managing servers and emails and things like that. Alex, last question we got on the deck here. He says, just had a lead hang up on me after hearing my price. I would have gotten discouraged in the past, but now I know they are not my target client. I guess this isn't a question so much as a comment, but Alex, I have some thoughts for you on that. Firstly, 60%, 60%, in my opinion, of agency success is the clients you choose. Now, let me tell you why this is so. There's been 100 years of direct mail testing, and they tried all kinds of different things, different offers, different copy, messaging different people, different lists, different that. And what they figured out in 100 years is 60% of it came down to who they sent the messages to, 30% came down to what they offered them, and 10% was like the copy and messaging. So those are like the three big factors. Now, if you think about this, 60% of your success, 6 out of 10, is who you choose as a client. And to illustrate this is how I like to make this point to people. Imagine, for example, your product was barbecue pork ribs. Okay? So you're selling barbecue pork ribs. This is how important audience selection is. I want you to imagine that you show up and you go to the Jewish Vegetarian Conference. So these are Jews and they're vegetarians on top of it. And you say, I got barbecue pork ribs. What kind of offer are you going to make? What kind of copy are you going to use to sell your ribs? And if you understand the point of this, the answer is none. You're never going to sell a single fucking thing. And even if you did get somebody, they would just complain about your shit. I want you to imagine now that you went to the Alabama football game in the South where barbecue's everywhere and you said, we got all you can eat pork ribs and beer. You're probably going to have a line around the fucking stadium. That's how much the audience matters. That's how much it matters who you deal with. So my point to you is I look for filtering that process earlier than you did it. I don't want to filter for the right people on a phone call. I know everybody thinks like more phone calls equals better. I think if you're going to do phone calls, which you don't have to, by the way, because we've laid out the framework so you can close without them. But if you're going to do phone calls, like to me, more qualified phone calls are better than more people but less qualified. So what I mean by that is I have like a temperature test that I do. And when I started to really look at this, I noticed that most of the people I got on the phone with were like 3 out of 10 on the idea of working together with me. And I would have to convince on a phone call. And when I started to understand this, I only wanted to get on the phone with people who were 7, 8s, 9s, 10s. Even 7 was probably a little on the low side. But people who basically already knew they wanted to buy from me. In fact, the easiest sales call I can ever remember doing is I did a speech at a big lawyer conference. And a week later, there was a booking on my calendar, and it was somebody who said, hey, we saw you speak at such and such event. I don't remember which event it was. But they said, I don't even know what you sell, but I want to buy it. How much does it cost? That's how the sales call started, right? So there's somebody who's like a 10 out of 10 on the idea of working together. I would much rather do those kind of phone calls. So that's my way of saying is if you're getting people that are like hearing your price and like, like you can, by the way, if you don't want to reveal your price before the phone call, you can do this indirectly. So you can say, for example, we could easily charge $10,000 a month for this service, but we don't because we want to give you a better deal. Right? What did I just tell you? Firstly, I anchored the price at $10,000, and now you got an idea, right? Like you're guessing like, I don't know, probably like $2,000 to $5,000 is like where my head goes to in that scenario. So you can telegraph your pricing a little bit if you're not ready to like list it on your website. Although using that IVQ formula, you can put it anywhere. But if you do that, what you'll find is you'll get better people to come through the phone calls and you won't get hung up on. So you are correct that the wrong person showed up, and that shows you what you do want. But remember, we don't want to make barbecue pork rib offers to Jewish vegetarians. We only want to do it to people who are like at the stadium ready to watch some football, get down, barbecue, and do the beer thing. And so the right people is actually the single most important part of doing this in an agency. And if you understand that, you have like a huge advantage over everyone else. So hope that's super helpful. By the way, just a little quick announcement for those of you guys who missed the beginning. I'm probably beating this to death, but version 2.0 of this guy is out. This is actually 1.0, I can tell because it's got 3 subheadlines. I shortened it a little bit. But what's in there for you guys, there's all kinds of stuff that we actually talked about today. Cold outreach frameworks, expectation setting frameworks, selling without phone calls frameworks, getting better people on the phone, understanding what makes a good client so you don't waste time chasing people, the less but better agency lead gen. If sending 10,000 messages a day is for you, do it. But if you want to be like more our style and just like send 5 and pick up a couple clients, we lay out how to do that in this book. And yeah, that's really like, check it out on Amazon. If you got Kindle or Audible already, they should have updated. So you just need to like log back in and you'll see it's a newer, it's a more deeper, more complete book. And if you're like me, if you're a physical copy, you got to get a new one. Let me know, because if you need to, I can probably get you a little discount on the old price, though I'm not 100% sure on that, because Amazon is they only let me run a certain number of promotions and things like that. Anyways, that's all I got for you guys in this. I hope this was super helpful. I always love doing this to hang with you guys. Good to see Evans. Good to see Carlos. And anybody else who's watching this, much love, and may the force be with you.